So a quarterback who can do all of that, who has those skill sets and tools, they're more effective than a quarterback who is limited, right? So it's the same thing here in the leadership game. So let's put it in perspective into what our roles and responsibilities are. So what do you think as a leader, and this is anyone, what do we think as a leader are some important things that we need to show to be effective in this leadership game and building a team?
Good work ethic. Good work ethic.
Strong work ethic, so character, right? What's that?
Backbone.
Backbone, right? Be strong, right? What else?
Lead by example.
Lead by example. Huge. I mean, this is a monkey see, monkey do business, right? So a conversation I have with Gio right now is Gio's in a different season in his leadership phase. When he first started off, he was just leading and he just wanted to have fun and party with his friends and make money and travel, right? So I talked to him about it. I'm like, so you were in a different phase as a leader. Right now he's in a developer phase, right? So anything that he's doing, he's trying to replace himself and develop someone. But back in the day, he was just trying to party and have fun, right? So we talked about that. I'm like, so the example and the leadership that you were showing back then is a different set of leadership that you have to do now. So you're gonna have to, like some of the guys who've seen you do some of the crazy stuff that you did as a leader, you're gonna have to reprogram that with a bunch of new habits and things like that. Does that make sense? Yeah, you guys are laughing because you guys are the guys that know, right? You guys have seen that wild side, right? But he has to grow and change as a person. He still can't be that leader anymore if he wants to go to the next level. If he wants to stay at the same level where he has to constantly rebuild a team, train people, take people out, things like that, then he can continue that behavior. But if he wants to get to a position to where, you know, he doesn't have to go in the field, he only goes in the field when he wants to, where he's helping expand into different markets and things like that, he's gonna have to change his leadership phase. Because if I did the things that Gio did amongst you guys, we wouldn't be in this position. You guys would look at me totally different. I had to change the things that I did for me to go to the next level. Does that make sense? All right, so we got that, right? So the law of the lid. So determining your lid will determine how effective you are. So i.e. it's important for us to constantly grow and evolve, because as soon as you are stagnant and you stop growing as a leader, that's where your lid is at, and that's as far as you're gonna go. So I believe they gave the example of the McDonald's brothers, who were very good at systems and building systems, but they lacked vision, they lacked thinking outside of the box.
And they started with milkshakes.
Right, and that's what's it kind of handicapped them. They were stuck, they couldn't grow. And then a guy, Ray Kroc, came in and saw the potential in this franchise, and he saw the vision, and he was great at recruiting, right? I don't know if you guys saw the movie, but he was like sitting down with people who were like good in other businesses and recruiting them to buy a McDonald's. So he started recruiting the right type of people, and then the rest is history. We see McDonald's has served billions of people. They're international, they're all over the place.
And they regret it for not fucking doing it themselves.
Well, they didn't have, their lid was low. They didn't have the ability to see past that.
A closed mind is the most expensive thing to have.
Right. So that's why you see some leaders who can build and have no problem with growing a team, and some leaders can't. It's not that it can't be done, it's just that their lid, whatever it is that's blocking them from being able to go to that next level, is the reason why they are where they are. All right, so we're in number 2 here. All right, so we'll start with the law of influence. Ricky, we'll start with you, and let's just popcorn around that way.
All right. So the law of influence, the true measure of leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. If you don't have influence, you will never be able to lead others. As psychologist Harry A. Overstreet observed, the very essence of all power to influence lies in getting the other person to participate. If no one is following you, you're not a leader. The law of influence is about obtaining followers, which makes it the basis for leadership. One of my favorite stories that illustrates the law of influence concerns Abraham Lincoln. In 1832, decades before he became president, young Lincoln gathered together a group of men to fight in the Black Hawk War. In those days, The person who put together a volunteer company for the militia often became its leader and assumed the commanding rank. In this instance, Lincoln was given the rank of captain, but Lincoln had a problem. He knew nothing about soldiering. He had no prior military experience, and he knew nothing about tactics. He had trouble remembering the simplest military procedures. For example, one day Lincoln was marching a couple of dozen men across a field and needed to guide them through a gate into another field, but he couldn't manage it. Recounting the incident later, Lincoln said, "I cannot for the life of me remember the proper word of command for getting my company endwise. Finally, as we came near the gate, I shouted, 'This company is dismissed for 2 minutes,' when it will fall in again on the other side of the gate." As time went by, Lincoln's level of influence with others in the militia actually decreased. While other officers proved themselves and gained rank, Lincoln found himself going in the other direction. He began as a captain, but title and position did him little good. He couldn't overcome the law of influence. By the end of his military service, Abraham Lincoln had found his rightful place, having achieved the rank of private. Fortunately for Lincoln and for the fate of the United States, he overcame his inability to influence others. Lincoln followed his time in the military with undistinguished stints in the Illinois State Legislature and the U.S. House of Representatives. But over time and with much effort and personal experience, he became a person of remarkable influence and impact and one of the nation's finest presidents. I love the leadership proverb that says, he who thinks he leads but has no followers is only taking a walk. If you can't influence people, then they will not follow you, and if people won't follow you, you are not a leader. That's the law of influence. No matter what anybody else may tell you, remember that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less.
All right, so we'll stop there. So what was a flaw in his game, in Abraham Lincoln's game?
He didn't know how to lead at first.
He didn't really have experience.
Didn't have experience, but what else was, like there was something particular that pointed out?
He was a lone wolf.
Lone wolf. Didn't he have trouble remembering simple procedures
Yeah.
and things like that? He just didn't have his shit together. Simple and plain. And it's
this kid, I never really caught it like that. He just didn't have his shit together.
Right. So it's the same thing with this, right? In our game. So someone is appointed to you on your team, and you're in that position leadership. They're like, okay, Stephon gives me Kevin. That means Kevin is actually supposed to be an expert in this position. So he's gonna teach me some stuff. He goes out with Kevin. Kevin's car's unorganized. Kevin's driving around looking for territory, doesn't know where he's going. I'm using you as an example in reference to, right? Kevin spends his time first part of the morning trying to go to callbacks, and then they fall through. It's 1 o'clock, no sales yet. Then Kevin tries to find a new territory, probably drives from Downey, and it's like, you know what, Bellflower is juicy, so drives all the way to Bellflower to that territory, then starts to hit doors and is doesn't perform that well, right? Doesn't get any sales. Like that person is already looking at Kevin as a cluster, right? The influence is already starting to diminish. He's starting to question himself like, man, should I be doing this job? Should I work somewhere else? Blah, 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 blah. Then the next day, Kevin texts the guy, hey, we're gonna be meeting here. And then the guy, no reply, right? It has something to do with influence. Good morning, Solo.
I think just that first impression is really key.
It's super important, right? So, but that happens. That happens in leadership. I can't say when I first started training a team. Luckily, when I got to when I recruited Ken, I had already gone through all of the problems, right? So when Ken got to me, I was already on my A game. Ken was hella hard to recruit. He was not because he was already a high position at UPS and commission only. He just was employee minded. I actually lied to Ken.
You know, I tried to recruit Ken. That's how I met him.
Ken, who?
I tried to recruit Ken until he said that's how I met him.
Yeah. Well, he was back then. He was a tough recruit, but I lied to Ken. I told him when he got into leadership, he would get a $500 a week salary, right? So he was like, okay, because he was so driven about salary. I want a salary. I want guaranteed money. I'm like, dude, I can teach you how to go out here and make that money every single week. You're all right? So I'm like, fine. When you get into leadership and you prove it to the company, you're gonna get a $500 salary. He's like, cool. He goes out there and he freaking smashes it. He's making $1,000 a week, $600 a week, right? Surpassing that. Then he gets promoted to leadership. And we had our promoting manager at the time. He was like a ex-Air Force, like military. He's hardcore, right? Like he didn't give a shit about nothing. Like he was super hardcore, but he made us tough. And so Ken goes into the office and he's just like, all right, I got promoted. Can I get my salary? He's like, what the fuck? Who gets a salary? You don't get no day. He starts going off on Ken, and Ken was just all like, and I'm on the other side of the door like, shit. I thought he was gonna forget about this salary by the time he got into leadership. Ken was so pissed at me, and I was like, man, I was trying to just get your mind off of that salary. I promised you I could show you how to make the 500. Like, there's no need to have to rely and worry about that. He's like, I know, but and he was butthurt for like a couple of weeks. Ken was mad at me for like 2 weeks. Like Ken, if you don't keep your word with Ken, it like kills him, right? So I had at that point, I could say that was a flaw in leadership right there. I lost some influence with him. But I had, if you look at a bank account, right, you make deposits and you make withdrawals. So that lie was a big withdrawal, right? But unfortunately, I had made a ton of deposits into that bank account, right? And then afterwards to prove to Ken, and that's how I was able to save grace, right? But I learned from that, and I'm like, I'll never do that again. And I didn't think, at the time, I'm like, I just want his mind to stop focusing on this damn salary and let's focus on the sales. And I knew leadership was gonna be a month away. I'm like, in a month, I'll teach this guy how to make the money, right? So I wasn't like, in my mind, I justified the lie, because I'm like, by the time he gets promoted to leadership, he's gonna not care about the money. But he cared about it at that time. It actually, yeah, he was pissed at me for like 2 weeks. Big time. All right, so let's.